Hello and welcome to The Mayor and I with me, Lindsay Khan and Nick Buckley, MBE. We've run out of numbers now. We don't know what number this is.
This is actually number 20.
Is it?
Yeah.
Welcome to number 20 of The Mayor and I with me, Lindsay Khan and Nick Buckley.
I did the graphic before, ready for us doing this.
Yeah.
And I saw the thumbnail of the YouTube and I did that. I went, oh, it's number 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it started as Nick Buckley's campaign to be the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He came a magnificent third with 50,000 votes. He's now attempting to be a parliamentary candidate for Oldham East and Saddleworth, standing as an independent, and pleased on 4th of July.
4th of July.
Please vote for Nick. We're going to talk about the campaign and how it's going first, but we're also going to talk about reform. We did briefly discuss the fact you might consider calling up Nigel Farage, who you know quite well, and potentially...
A little bit. I know him a little bit. I wouldn't say...
You've been on TV with him and he's interviewed you and all sorts.
Several times.
You've been on his programme on GB News. So, sorry, welcome Nick. Sorry. What happened? I didn't ask, but what happened to that conversation, if it happened at all?
I emailed him. He probably hasn't even looked at the emails, especially the address I've got for him.
Yes.
Because he's in a whirlwind himself.
Yes.
So I reached out to say, is there anything we can do here? And I'll probably hear off him after the elections.
Yeah. I suspect he was, before the election, he was in a position where he was taking emails and talking to people, and he probably had time. I should imagine he's got no time at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, before we talk about reform, could we ask how your campaign is going in Oldham East and Saddleworth? I've seen a few YouTube things, and you've been down there. You've met people. I've seen that.
It's hard to tell because you only speak to people reach out to you who like you and they're going to vote for you anyway, so then you presume everyone likes you and everyone's going to vote for you. I know that's not the truth. Everyone's running a shambles of a campaign. Everybody is in the country.
Yeah.
And so am I. So how is that going to impact me and my votes? I don't know. Because there's not much. I suppose there is a little bit of name recognition with me because I stood for mayor last month. But not compared to the party names, Labour, Tory, Reform, Lib Dems. They've got an institutional name with them. I've paid for some newspaper advertisements in the Oldham Times. I'm in the process of doing the same for the Oldham Chronicle. The Oldham Chronicle is only online, but the Oldham Times is online and a physical paper as well. So I'm doing something new there to see what I can do. Spending most of my time on social media. I've been out and about doing some street interviews.
Seen those.
Yeah. They've gone well, so they're being edited into little shorts at the moment with like 60-second clips, which are doing well online. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, they're doing well on that. And I think that's really, I'm doing everything I can do. We had a meeting in a pub in Saddleworth, the Spinners Arms. That was a really good meeting. Unfortunately, half the people there were from the wrong side of Oldham.
Oh, right.
And I says, why did you come? They went, oh, we just like you and wanted to hear from you.
Right.
So that's great.
Yeah.
But they can't vote for me. But that was a really good meeting, very positive. Lots of people wanting change. And we will see how we do.
Yeah.
The best thing this week is someone came up with a strap line about the Labour MP, Debbie Abrams, and I've stole it. And he called her Debbie Does Delusion.
All right.
And I've been using it ever since. I think that's so funny, Debbie Does Delusion.
And why are they saying that about her?
Because she thinks she's a great MP, she thinks she's fighting for people, but she spends most of her time fighting for Kashmir. She had a visa cancelled on her way to India because she was going to Kashmir to help the people of Kashmir.
Why is she helping the people of Kashmir?
I have no idea. She thinks she represents them.
Is she from Kashmir?
No. From what I believe, she's Jewish.
Right. Okay.
And also, she was one of the Labour MPs, one of 50 MPs who have been stopping foreign criminals being deported once they serve time in British jails.
All right.
So she just has. So that's why we call her Debbie Does Delusion. She's got no idea what her people want in her area.
Wow. That's just. That's got nothing to do with Oldham.
No.
Okay. And that lack of touch, being out of touch with the British public, is a massive theme. I think we're seeing in this election.
Yeah.
That a lot of MPs have no idea, and I think Rishi Sunak and the D-Day thing was an example of that. Whilst it was a stupid thing to do, it was kind of not a heinous crime. It was a stupid, naive thing to do. But I think what was more interesting is about the fact that he had no idea, and his advisors had no idea of the impact it would have on the British public.
That's the issue. So him leaving the D-Day celebrations, to a certain extent, wouldn't affect his votes one way or the other.
Yeah.
If he stayed. It's the fact he didn't think, and no one around him could speculate, this isn't going to look good in the press.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks you're moving to America in a few months anyway. You had a green card for America. No one thinks you believe in this country. We just think you treat it as a hotel. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And you prove them all right by not even staying for the D-Day celebrations.
Yeah. And we're going to talk, maybe we're going to talk about reform first. We're going to talk in maybe a later episode about the other politicians. But the recurring theme I keep seeing is these politicians, and these politicians in Labour, Tory politicians, and is it the SDP with that awful, what's he called?
It won't be the SDP. Do you mean SNP?
No, it's the Liberal. Sorry, the Liberal.
Lib Dems.
Lib Dems.
Right,
What's it?
right.
Ed Davey.
Yes.
Is it Ed Davey? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir Ed Davey.
Yeah. He hasn't got a clue either.
Yeah, these characters just seem so out of touch. Their behaviours suggest they're just massively out of touch with the general public. I think, based on what you see them doing.
They are, but then we have to think, why are they doing it? And one of the reasons why they might be doing it is because they're in direct contact with the people who vote for them.
Yes.
And they may like all this.
I don't think they do. But we're going to talk about that. So we're going to talk about reform. So on June the 12th, a poll on June the 12th, and we're now June 18th, I think we are today. Yeah. So the reform, there was a poll taken of quite a substantial number of people, and reform in that poll overtook the Conservatives in terms of popularity or votes, proposed votes, at 19% of the vote.
Yep.
Now that was a massive day and a massive poll, and I think most of the polls coming since then have echoed that in showing the reform at or close to the Tories in terms of popularity and potential voting. And that has been a phenomenal shift since Farage announced he was leading the Reform Party. This potentially is a seismic impact on British politics. I think I was going to ask what you thought about that poll and the ramifications of it in terms of what it means for the country, but also what the other parties are thinking.
My understanding is this is the first time ever the Tories have dropped out of the top two in a poll. First time ever, because they're the oldest political party in the world. They're like 250 years old, something like that. And it's the first time in a poll in this country they've dropped out of first to second place.
Wow.
That's historic.
Yeah.
It was, you could tell by the polls it was coming. People were talking about it. Reform had been creeping up. And Nigel Farage coming back was the boost they needed because he's popular in many circles. He's hated in lots of circles as well, but he's popular in many circles. And I think it's potentially, I'm not sure it's going to be, but it's potentially a death nail for the Tory party if they don't play their cards right.
Yeah. I think it could signal the end of what we know as the existing Tory party, definitely. And it depends how those votes go on the day, don't they? But you know, my constituency is Altrincham and Altrincham Trafford, something like that. And I typed in my postcode in a Telegraph thing today, and it said the seat is likely to go to Labour. Well, it's always been a Conservative seat. Well, all the time I've been in that area. So I was quite shocked because my MP was Graham Brady, Sir Graham Brady, who was
chair of the 22
chair
committee.
of the 1922 committee, a Tory stalwart, a very well established Tory in the Senate. It looks like he's going to lose. I don't think he's actually standing, but I think the Tories are going to lose that seat. So this is quite a serious thing that's happening or coming at us now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of the predictions are Tories down to 70 seats.
Wow.
That will. I don't. It may all end up being a lot better for the Tories than we imagine it's going to be.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it could be the worst it's ever been for them.
Yeah.
We just don't know. We don't know how people are going to vote because people lie to pollsters.
Yes.
And people tell pollsters how they're going to vote right this second now.
Yeah.
And right this second now, Reform or Labour. But when they're stood in that polling booth with a pencil and they're going, right, this is serious now.
Yeah.
What do I want?
Yeah.
Then a million other things flood into their mind, and that can make them vote away. They weren't going to vote 3 days ago when a pollster spoke to them.
Yeah.
So we just don't know. And pollsters themselves are wrong all the time.
Yeah.
No one predicted the Boris Johnson wipeout. No one predicted the Brexit. No one predicted David Cameron's second election win. So they're wrong almost as much as they're right, pollsters.
Yeah. I mean, my view on this and what I'd like to say to anybody who's prepared to listen to me, but I know people are prepared to listen to you so they can hear my thoughts vicariously through you. I would like everybody, no matter... And sorry, this doesn't work in your favour, by the way, Nick. I would like everybody, no matter where they are, even if they know that Reform aren't going to win and that Labour are going to win, or even if there's a chance to... I would like everybody to vote Reform, because what I would like to see is if, say, Reform got nationally 6-7 million votes from the people, it doesn't matter whether they win seats or not. I think if that happens, and I think Farage said this in one of his press conferences the other day, where he basically said, we're now the opposition. I think if Farage and the Reform Party wins 6 or 7 million votes, that will be the transformational thing. Because that will be then saying to all the other political parties, we're getting something wrong here. Because this guy, this party, has got more than 10% of the population voting for him, basically. So even though we haven't got proportional representation, even got with this awful first past the post system, I think if Reform win 3 or 4 seats, if they get 6-7 million votes, then I think the other parties are going to sit up and listen. And I think we've got a real change happening in British politics.
I don't think the other parties will care. The parties don't care how many votes Reform get. They only care about how many seats they win. You can get 20 million votes. If you've only got 2 MPs, you're powerless.
Yeah.
You may look good.
Yeah.
You may be able to whinge about it. You've only got 2 seats, but you've only got 2 seats.
Yeah.
And Lib Dems might get 3 million votes and get 60 seats. Well, that's the system we're in.
Yeah. But is that fair?
It's our system. So I'm not for proportional representation. I feel that's a loser's way of trying to change the game they want to play in. We have our system in this country. It's not working at the moment, but I don't think that's a system's fault. I think that's because of career politicians and the apathy of the people in the country. Because, you know, in my last election, the mayor's election, 2 out of 3 people didn't even vote. So how is that a reflection of what the people want? Because most of the people don't even tell politicians what they want and won't even vote. What I think is going to happen with Reform, I think they'll end up merging with the Tory party under the Tory brand. So depending on what happens in the election, Tories will be punished. Doesn't matter how much they're punished, but they'll be punished. Labour will win. We then need to look at, and Nigel Farage will be looking at, who's left. Who are the Tory MPs left? Are they true Tories? Or are they wet, One Nation, woke, pink, fluffy, Blairite Tories? If they are proper Tories, then that makes sense of reform and the proper Tories to unite under the Tory brand, because it's a big famous brand. If they're not, if it's the one Tory wet, Nigel Farage will carry on trying to destroy the Tory party. Because all they want, really, all Reform want, is a change in the country.
Yeah.
So if they can get that by merging with the Tories, once they've sorted the Tories out, and get the politicians they want with the policies they want, it makes perfect sense, because then they'll be in a stronger position to challenge Labour at the next election. But we don't know how that's going to work out.
But do you agree with the idea of just people just voting for reform to send a message?
Yes, but there are many people who won't vote reform for many reasons. So I say to people, you need to vote for anyone apart from the main parties. So vote for reform, fantastic.
Yeah, vote for independent.
Vote for independent, vote for the SDP, vote for any of these other smaller parties. Don't give your vote to the main four parties, because it only encourages them.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying vote for reform, but the reason I'd say vote for reform is I think that can have an impact.
Yeah.
I think that will have an impact. If those numbers come out and they've had 6-7 million votes, then I think I disagree with you. I think the other parties will have to look at that and say there's a large, substantial part of the population here who wants this kind of change, and that's what we need to deliver, basically. So
if that was going to happen, the Tories would have done that by now, because the Tories know what the people want. But they will do. It's the people in the Tory party don't want any of that. That's why we can't leave the ECHR, Court of Human Rights, and it's because the people sat in cabinet don't want it. The majority of people in the cabinet in 10 Downing Street do not want us to leave, and they're Tory MPs. Yeah.
The Reform campaign, yesterday they released their manifesto, and I've actually printed off for us a kind of summary of that manifesto, and I'd like to kind of go through it and just get your opinion on what you think about it, because I genuinely, when I saw this, I was really quite impressed. I was really quite impressed, and it said a lot of the things that I think. Now, whether I think the right way, I don't know, but some of the stuff it says immediately is things that you and I have been talking about. So I'll just pick we'll start with one of my favourites, which is net zero.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is we're going to ditch net zero to save £30 billion a year. We're going to scrap the £10 billion renewable energy subsidies.
Yeah.
And we're going to fast track North Sea and shale oil gas licenses.
Perfect. We have natural resources in the North Sea, and we're having to deal with Putin and Middle Eastern dictatorships for our oil and energy when we have it off the shore in our country. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't know is on our electricity bill, something like 25% of our electricity bill is green taxes.
You're joking.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's scandalous.
That's what's funding the green agenda. If we stop that, all our electricity bills would go down 25% overnight.
Fantastic.
And then if you knocked off the 5% VAT, that's 30% gone off our energy bills for electricity. All these things are killing us individually and making the cost of living crisis worse. And it is also putting, how can you be a business that's heavily reliant on energy and compete against the world when we've got a 30% tax on our energy?
Yeah.
That's why we're not making anything here as much as we used to, because we can't afford it.
And has any other party said that?
No. Every other party is opposite to that.
Yes.
The Labour Party have just announced they're bringing back the 2030 ban on all petrol diesel cars, of new cars. So the Tories pushed it back 5 years.
Labour are going to bring it back?
Yeah, the Tories pushed it to 35.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, well, Labour saying no, day one it comes back in at 2030 for new diesel and petrol cars. But that won't work. But it's still all this rubbish. So I like that.
I think that's fantastic. Tax and spending, this is interesting. Lift the income tax threshold to £20,000. So what that means is anybody who earns up £20,000 just won't pay any tax.
Yeah.
Scrap stamp duty below £750,000.
Yeah.
Because car houses have gone up
Yeah.
in price now. So abolish inheritance tax for all estates under 2 million.
Yeah.
And lower fuel duty by 20 pence a litre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuel duty, yeah, absolutely. Inheritance tax, bit of a tricky one.
I think what they're doing
Raising the increase is correct because all our properties are worth
Correct,
more now.
yeah.
So when inheritance tax was first brought in, it was for the extremely rich,
Yeah.
so many percent
Yeah.
of people. We've got middle class people now being pulled into inheritance
Yeah.
tax because
Yeah.
their house now is worth 2 million.
Yeah.
So it does need looking
Well,
at.
inheritance tax is something like 250,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think anybody with a property that's worth over 250,000 falls
Yeah.
into the inheritance tax.
Which is probably below the national average of a price of a house in the UK.
So what's happened? It's not just middle class people. It's lots of working people with just fairly modest houses have been dragged into this now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was never the intention.
No,
but that's what's happened.
Yes, exactly.
So
So it's not kept up with inflation.
Yeah.
But inheritance tax for me is a way of equalising the game a little bit. So I do want the increase to go up so most people aren't paying it. But if you can imagine you do well in this country, that's because you played the game. The game of this country you've done well in. And at the end of the game's over now. And you need to pay back for all the benefits and opportunities you've got to this country. Now, where that level is, I don't know. I've not looked into it and researched it enough. But I know lots of people who hate inheritance tax and resent paying it. I can see a reason for it to a certain extent. But it's where do we put that level?
Yeah, but I don't agree with that argument because the people you're talking about, the people who've done well, who've played the game and made money, they're paying extra tax all the way through their lives.
Yeah.
So they're paying higher rates of tax anyway. They're hitting 40, 50%. They're paying more stamp duty. They're paying more, for their cars, everything like that as well. So I think they're paying the price for their success. But it's kind of, you'll pay the price for your success whilst you're alive.
And then when you're dead.
And then when we're dead, you'll pay a little bit more price for your success.
I understand the way
as well.
people think about this, but for me it's nuanced. I can see both sides of inheritance tax. So what were the other ones on finance?
Scrap stamp duty below 750,000. So what they're saying is, again, this is to do with the increase in house prices. So stamp duty was originally for houses over a certain value, and it was a wealth tax. Now everybody gets hit by stamp duty. So that's the rationale for that one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And the other one is income tax at 20,000.
Income tax, 20. I think that's a brilliant one.
I don't.
Okay.
I think we need a better tax system that's more gradual. What I don't like about that is you now don't pay tax till you earn 20 grand. I think everyone should pay tax in this country. It's what level it's set at. So you'll get to 20 grand. Is there going to be an issue there that you don't want a better job anymore now, or you won't take that pay rise, you won't work any extra hours because that's going to push me over the 20 grand and I'm going to start paying tax and I don't want to pay tax.
But you won't pay tax.
I know you won't pay tax, but this is how human minds work.
Yeah.
I know people who won't work overtime because they still think you're going to be taxed twice. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But lots of people believe things they've been told.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to get to this ceiling where lots of people won't want to aspire over that because there's a barrier there of paying tax. I would like to see something like up to £20,000, you pay 5% tax, you pay 3% tax. Because what that does subconsciously to people is you're part of this society. And we're not giving you a break because you're on low wages. You're going to contribute just like everyone else contributes. Other people contribute more than you, but you buy into this society. And if you're paying your tax, that means you have a voice, and that means you are just as good as the millionaire because he's paying his tax, you're paying your tax. I just think, and I've done lots of work with vulnerable people and disenfranchised people, when you offer people something for nothing, they value it less. We need people to buy into this country, buy into the system, buy into being better, and paying a certain amount of tax. They bought into this now. It's my tax money they're wasting now. It's not like, oh, well, it doesn't matter to me if they waste it. I don't pay tax. I'm only on 19 grand. It's like, no, It is your money. Now, at the moment, tax rate's 20%. Yeah, no, I'd like it heavily reduced to 5% for the first 20,000. Or let's make it 25,000.
Yeah.
But I want people to buy in to this country by paying tax, and it's your money they're wasting then.
You have a very Catholic streak to you, Nick, sometimes.
Do I?
This kind of...
I was christened Catholic, but I was raised Protestant.
This kind of... This attitude of, you're buying into... So you're very much into teaching people lessons about things.
But that's been my career for decades.
We've had this debate before when you wanted to, when one of the first things you say when you made the MP of Saddleworth and East what was it? Oldham East and Saddleworth. The first thing you said, tell them, is to go and tidy the gardens. Tidy your gardens up and pay 5% tax. The reason I like that idea is because I think that's beneficial for young people. And I think young people have been treated so badly for so long. This is a nice thing for them. So if you're working at McDonald's and you're only earning 20 grand a year or whatever, the fact that you're getting that money, all your money, you can spend it, and you're a young person, it gives you a chance. So that's why I like it.
No,
I get your idea,
like
if it's 5%, that's fine, whatever. But I don't think, this idea of having to teach people lessons all the time. We don't need to teach people lessons. It's just if it's a young person and he knows he's not getting taxed on his first 20 grand, he'll have a much nicer life. And I think that's a real. I like the idea because I worry about young people, but I know why Farage is doing it. He's doing it to appeal to young people as well. Because a lot of young people read that and think that'd be great.
It's also appealing to the working poor.
Yeah.
People who work full time and do overtime.
Yeah.
And still can't make ends meet because they're being taxed all the time. And then don't forget, on top of your 20% tax, you've got 15% national insurance tax.
Yeah.
So at the moment, a third of your wages disappears in tax.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see national insurance scrapped. Because national insurance is an extra tax on your wages that no one understands.
Yeah.
And we think it's for the NHS and pensions. No, it's not. It just goes to general tax pot. I'd like to see that scrapped.
Well, in relation to that, I'm trying to find the point. But here he's saying on families, support marriage through the tax system.
Yeah.
Reform child benefits, allow mum to stay at home. Promote child-friendly smartphones. But I'm going to add into this one benefits. He's also saying a 2-strike rule for job offers.
Yep.
So if you're on benefits, you get 2. If you're offered 2 jobs, if you don't take either of the jobs, you lose your benefits. And face-to-face assessments. Now, one thing I'm aware of in businesses, in the assessment system, and you and I have talked about this before, there's certain people who work for me who don't want bonuses, don't want pay increases, don't want to work more hours, because if they go over a certain amount,
it affects their benefits.
It affects their benefits, and their overall income goes down. Now, there's something wrong there, and I think it's not in here, but I think he's trying to address that in this, isn't he? That idea that there's a benefit system there that is discouraging people from working.
And there always has been since the 80s. Well, since it began, really.
Yeah.
So the benefit system does need looking at. Child benefit. I'm not too keen on child benefit, because I remember being at barbecues with my friends, started having children, and they were discussing about how they put their child benefit into a savings account because when their kid's 18 they're going to buy a car with it, and I'm there going, that's not what child benefit's for.
Correct.
So I'm not too keen on child benefit. Tax breaks for married couples. That sends a good signal. I'm not sure it does anything for anyone being married, but it wouldn't harm anyone.
But you're a big believer in marriage as an institution, aren't you?
Yeah,
and
so
families.
So that just sends the right signal.
Sorry, that's what I mean.
This government is going to be pro-marriage, pro-family, pro-children.
Yes.
So that sends a good message to that. But I don't think the tax break itself changes people's behaviour, but the fact we're doing it sends the message to the country that we're putting these things as a priority now. So I like that.
Yeah.
What else was on there?
Promotes child-friendly smartphones. This to me...
I'm not sure how...
Yeah. This to me is something that I don't find attractive, because this is almost a Nick Buckley thing, which is we'll stop kids from using phones to teach them a lesson.
I do not teach people lessons. What I try to do is create the environment and the situation for people to improve their own lives. That's what I try to do. If a government thinks they're going to mess around with the mobile phone industry and create child-friendly smartphones, they're just wasting their time.
They're living in cloud cuckoo land.
Exactly.
Yeah, kids will find their way around it.
What they need to do is we need better parenting.
Yes.
Parents need to be better.
I agree.
Children belong to parents, and parents need to be better parents.
Yeah.
That's where that lies.
Yes.
Not with big government dictating phones and what you can have on the phone and the app. And believe me, kids will break those phones straight away. There'll be some clever 15-year-old at school going, well, I can reprogram your phone, there we go, 10 quid.
Yeah, correct. You're right. I think the answer to that is better parenting and protecting children. I think that's I worry a lot about kids, having had 5 of my own grown up, and I hate.
You got 5 kids?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that after all. You must have seen them at various times.
I thought you had 3.
No.
2 girls and a boy.
3 girls. Sorry, 2 girls, 3 boys.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Well.
You've definitely seen them all at various times, Nick. Definitely. I think.
Well, I just presumed it was the same 3.
So I've had, so children, and I'm very conscious that children are constantly being abused in all sorts. And I don't just mean physical or sexual abuse. I'm talking about mental abuse of children.
Bullying online. 24/7.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about parents doing this. I'm talking about parents and the mental abuse of parents visit on their children. So I prefer to see that dealt with by the use of the law or whatever, or teaching or whatever. And then let the parents manage the kids' phones in terms of the management of that. If they choose to say, look, you've got to hand me your phone at 9 o'clock, which I also don't like anyway, but, if you're going to do that, then let the parents do that. Don't try and do big government, which is... So the reason I don't like that one is because everything else seems to be about reducing law, taking away legislation.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah, personal responsibility. That one's a bit, so I'm not too keen on that one.
I agree. And if you wanted to change the behaviour of young people like that, and parents really, what we do is we create social shame. But the government has to lead on this, but other parents will go, I've seen your child is a 7's on Facebook. I've never had my child on Facebook on 7. I'm just a better parent.
Yeah.
That influences other people, other parents.
Yeah.
So again, it's down to society as well, being supported by the government to bring back some of these values.
Yeah. And this is peer policing, isn't it? We're talking about now, and that's very interesting because we're constantly being bombarded, and we're seeing it in the Euros as well, which is hate. These things about hate, don't hate, and all that sort of crap. And the hate, racism stands in no place or whatever. This constant hectoring and lecturing. The reality is, society has been taking care of this stuff and is getting better of it as years go by. Introducing legislation all the time, hate crime and all that sorts of crap, does not benefit the society as it gets more sophisticated, more educated, more wealthy, starts to take care of these issues themselves, I believe, and we should rely.
Some of them, but look at the trans ideology we've got now. Look at the abuse we've got. Children who say I'm born in the wrong body. So not always, but I agree with your point. This isn't for government to do; it's for society to do.
Who gets abused saying they're born in the wrong body?
So if you've got a 7-year-old person now in this country now, the medical profession will abuse them and say, yes, you are born in the wrong body. When you get to 16, we're going to cut your breasts and penis off. So everything. Progress isn't always in the right direction.
Yes, but that isn't peer control. That's
peer control. No, it's peer control now.
Yes, I suppose it is.
It is.
Yeah, but it is backed up by the government and legislation, isn't it?
It is.
That's the problem.
There's nothing wrong with hate. I hate paedophiles.
Yeah.
So hate is a natural reaction to something you don't like, or you don't want, or you're scared of, or whatever. So all these emotions are trying to ban a decent emotions that we have.
Yeah.
Love can go too far. You can love your child that much. You never let him leave the house. You never let him have friends. You overfeed him. But you're doing it through love. And love can be damaging, just like hate can be damaging.
Yeah.
But they're just emotions and reactions from us. And hate by itself isn't a negative. It's a negative feeling, but it's not a negative thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk more about that later. The benefits, 2-strike rule for job offers.
Again, benefit system needs looking at. People have tried this before. It's unworkable.
Yeah, I think that's difficult because you can get a situation where jobs are being offered that realistically are not proper jobs or whatever, or where somebody's trying to take advantage of the fact they've got to take a job. So I think, you could go for 2 jobs and just they would not be suitable basically for whatever reason, and you then end without benefits when you might deserve it. So it's a tricky one.
Let me tell you what will happen if they did that. They will take people off benefits for 2 strikes and you're out, and then they will be in the press the next day with their wife and their children going, we're now on a breadline. We've got, we're going to be evicted. We've got no food. My children are starving. And the public opinion, even though the public opinion against wasters and people sat on benefits, once you get those sob stories, people will change. That's why that won't work. What I would do is on day one, I would freeze all benefits. There'll be no annual increase in any benefits from day one. And over time, those benefits become less and less valuable. And over time, and then you need to create the jobs. We need to end mass immigration because that will push wages up. And we'll get to a point where I'm actually now better off working because my benefits have gone down in real terms every year.
Yeah.
I've got support. We need to support these people. But we've got better paid jobs now as well. And it would have to be a longer term project. Otherwise, it's doomed for failure.
Yeah. But there are a lot of people on benefits now at the moment.
Yeah. Up to 7 million on either unemployed or underemployed.
Yeah. I can't find it now, but immigration should have been on here, but I can't find it.
It wasn't on the one you sent me.
Oh, okay. Let's move on. I've missed one of the most important.
It surprised me there was no immigration section. It's like, you don't want to talk about immigration?
There is an immigration section, and I'll find it in a second.
Right.
Policing.
Yeah.
Increase police numbers to 300 per 100. This policing is your favourite subject.
Yeah.
Zero tolerance policing.
Yeah.
Zero tolerance is what you call, have you heard of broken windows policing?
Broken window effect, yeah.
Preference for ex-military personnel to head up the forces. Not sure about that one. Police to have high standards of fitness and more bobbies on the beat.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get my phone while you're doing this.
Right.
Carry on talking.
I'll just...
More
bobbies on the beat is great, but it all depends what those bobbies are. If they're 4-foot women or obese men, then there's no point having them. So I wouldn't concentrate on the amount of police officers you have. I would concentrate on the quality of the police officers. So I would probably pay them more, use some of that money not to recruit as many as that, but I'd give them all a decent pay rise because that will keep retention. We need to make the police a professional service that people take pride in working for. You've seen the arrests now we see on TikTok and Twitter, where we've got, 2 women and 2 fat men trying to arrest a 17-year-old lad. And it's like, you can't even arrest a kid. And when he runs away, none of you can chase him. And it's like, this is pathetic. That's how we address policing to begin with. But I'd give him a pay rise because it would help with the retention. And at the moment now in society, you tell people you're a police officer, there's no respect there anymore now. There used to be 30, 40 years ago. You're a police officer, well done you. You're keeping us safe. That doesn't exist anymore now. So why would you, as a police officer, take the crap and the violence when the people you're protecting don't even care about you anyway anymore? So that is one of the main issues within the police. Fitness, absolutely. Absolutely. The British Transport Police have now just removed their fitness test. So there's no fitness test now. You used to have to run a bleep test they were called. They've just cancelled that because women find it hard.
Really?
Yeah. So now we'll have fat, unfit men as well joining, which we have already got, but at least they could run when they did the test. They can't even run now. So we keep reducing the standards in all our public services all the time.
Yeah.
And we keep getting poorer and poorer recruits coming through. So fitness is absolutely, and the military part of it, at the moment there's a big drive to get more and more university educated people straight out of university into the police. They've got no life experience. They're more likely to be woke and left-wing, and that's killing the police. I would be recruiting more ex-services. You've got someone who does 10 years in the army, comes out, late 30s. He's got 30 years career ahead of him now. Get him in the police. So I would be looking at that more as well.
He said that to head up forces, not necessarily to be in the forces.
Head up forces, again, that needs to be down to merit.
Yes.
So I don't want to be picking someone to run a force because you happen to be a captain
again,
in
that
the
could
Navy.
be positive discrimination, couldn't it?
I don't want to recruit people.
Yeah,
That's not
it should
on
be
merit.
based. Yeah, it should be based on merit.
Yeah.
I agree. More bobbies on the beat.
Again, it's who are those bobbies? If it's the woke idiots we've got now, then it makes no difference. I'd rather have the amount of officers we've got now, but train them better and pay them more, than have crap officers on the streets. I told you what a couple of officers said to me from Greater Manchester Police when I was running for mayor. They spoke to me and said, Nick, if we sacked 15 to 20% of the police officers in Greater Manchester Police, the ones who were crap, and didn't replace them, Greater Manchester Police would do better overnight. And I said, I'm not replacing them. They went, no. Replace them if you want, fantastic, but let's get rid of the crap, because we're constantly having to send good officers behind poor officers to clear up their messes.
Really?
So,
yeah. They're actually detracting from the overall performance because of the negative things they which is the same in business, isn't it? If you get one or two poor people in the wrong places, it creates havoc for the rest of the business and is inefficient, creates inefficiency.
Yep.
I found the immigration thing. For some reason I didn't print it. Right, so so freeze non-essential immigration.
On day one, yes. 2 years later, no.
Right, what does that mean?
That means 2 years later, I want immigration down to zero.
Oh, I see. Right, so you're
on day one, yes, because we've got
you want net zero. Is it what you call net zero immigration?
No, I want minus.
Right. Okay.
I want the population of the country to shrink.
Okay.
I want less immigrants living here.
Right.
So on day.
So you want to stop immigration completely on day one?
No.
Which means but let immigration carry on. You can't stop immigration, can you? Yeah.
On day one, I want to heavily reduce immigration.
Right.
But we need to give businesses in this country a couple of years to sort themselves out and start training up people and work out how they're going to do what they're going to do. A lot of them need to mechanise and use technology.
Yeah.
But we've got to give them a couple of years. So they're the essential workers. We have to give a bit of a leeway. But overnight, half it, I don't know. But most of it ends on day one. But then we give them a couple of years. But during this time as well, we need to start saying to people who live in this country, time to go home. You've been here 5 years now. And it's time to go home. And we start asking people to go home.
Nigel Farage, in one of the debates, he was actually quoting the numbers, which were quite startling. He said since Tony Blair since Tony Blair came to power, we've had 10 million immigrants into the country. Yep. And I think under Labour, under the Tories, it's something like, is it 7 million or something ridiculous?
It's horrendous figures.
I mean, these are massive numbers. These are population changing numbers. 10 million people in a country that has a population of 60 million is massive, which I hadn't really realised before. His next immigration one is to take immigrants in small boats back to France. Yeah,
that could be done in a fortnight. That could be ended in a fortnight if we had a government with a backbone.
Yeah. Bar student dependence. Apparently what we're finding out now is that a lot of students who come over
are bringing up to 8 people with them.
Yes, they can bring their family with them basically. Yeah. And then once they're here, they're here.
They're here, yeah. And they're all working. They're all going to the NHS.
Yeah.
And it's like the visas, the student visas became the latest scam for mass immigration.
Really?
So we need to halve the amount of universities we've got in this country. Half of them need to go bankrupt and go.
Right.
And then we'll be left with the good ones. At the moment, we've got universities who only advertise abroad because they know those people will come. They're not going to attend the classes, so we don't have to worry about any of that. We get their money off them, and then they disappear. It's a funding stream for universities that the taxpayer has to pick up for as long as they're here.
But the average man on the street thinks that doesn't happen. If you tell them that, they'll say, oh, no, there must be controls in place to stop that happening. But there aren't any, are there?
No. Why does a student need to bring 8 family members with them? Crazy.
And I think that's part of the problem, that the left or the liberals or the progressives, they don't believe it when they're told about these things and they say people come over, they bring 8 dependents, they don't go to lectures and they disappear and they're gone. They think, oh no, that can't happen because we have an immigration service, they'd get on them or whatever. But there's none of that happening, is there? There's no control over.
There's no control, but most of those lefties don't care because those people are here now, and that's nice for them. And I'm a nice person. Their country's not very nice, you know. At least they're here now, and safe.
Yeah.
And it means I get cheap Uber, and I get cheap Deliveroo, and I've got a nanny. My kid's got a nanny now, only paying £4.50 an hour. So they get benefits out of it as well.
Yeah.
Our immigration system has become a type of modern slavery.
Yeah,
it really has.
That's a good point.
We rip these people away from their countries, their ancestral homelands, their families, their relatives. We get them here. We then, to a certain extent, abuse them. We don't pay them what they're worth. The general population don't want them here. And the only people who want them here are the people who are getting benefits out of them, which are large corporates or businesses who are undercutting local wages, and people who are getting cheap coffee and cheap takeaways and stuff like that. It's kept the prices down for everybody. So, and we talked about the benefit system. So an average British person now can't afford to get a crap job because benefits pay more than that. But if that crap job paid twice as much because there was no cheap labour in the country, then they'd offer some benefits, don't they?
Yeah. So you think these immigrants are taking these cheap jobs?
They're not taking these cheap jobs.
Them.
They're creating these cheap jobs.
Right.
If their presence wasn't here, we wouldn't have people on push bikes delivering takeaways all over the country. Because you wouldn't want to pay £15 to get your takeaway delivered to you.
Yeah.
But you'll pay a couple of quid because they're doing it illegally and they're not paying tax, and a couple of quid for them because they send someone home with it. So they're creating a low wage economy in this country, and it's been happening for decades.
Yeah, which I think this is what's called zero contract work, isn't it, effectively, where they're not paid an hourly rate, these guys. You know, the guys that do the Deliveroo and all that sort of stuff.
Most of them are classed as self-employed.
Right. So
they're just self-employed. Again, that's a loophole. I'm for flexibility in the work market. So, 0-hour contracts can be good sometimes, and I've used them in the past. But when you're using these things, and it's obvious you're doing it so those individuals who work for you don't get extra benefits, that needs clamping down on, because our forefathers fought for employment rights for us, and I don't want to see us going back to stages where you're not getting holiday pay, you're not getting, all these things, even though you're working for that company full time and doing 16 hours a day. Why are we allowing it? So that kind of bank isn't really self-employed, doesn't have a choice. So some of it needs clamping down on. So only businesses were making money out of this.
And immediate access to benefits for immigrants, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely. So what we need to do is, no one born in this country should be able to claim benefits, I reckon. Even if you've worked here 10 years.
No one not born in this country should be able to claim, yeah.
I don't think you should be able to get social housing if you weren't born in this country.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be able to get some NHS services if you weren't born in this country. I would also like to see an increase in tax for people who weren't born in this country. 1 or 2 pence on top of the national rate of income tax.
Well, this is what he's saying. Employer immigration tax, 20% NI for foreign workers. So if you have a foreign worker working for you, you've got to pay 20% national insurance rather than 10% national insurance. That's not on the immigrant, that's on the employer.
Yeah, different way of doing it, and so I agree with that.
That's to discourage.
It's, again, they're doing it to discourage employers, but they'll be in government. So just stop people coming here, and you won't need to discourage employers.
Yeah.
Because in itself, that won't stop the pull factor, because the business is having to fork out. It will just encourage more businesses then to pay cash in hand.
Yeah.
So that in itself sounds good, but it doesn't stop the problem. The government can stop the problem with the border force. That's how we stop it, by deporting people.
But you broadly agree with most of those
Yes.
policies. Very good. Education. Patriotic curriculum in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. We need something to start pulling people together under the flag, under our monarch, under an umbrella that keeps us all together, where we know we belong here. And that doesn't matter if you're Indian descent, Caribbean descent. We need something to pull us together. And to do that, we need to start, and this is propaganda, we need to start doing it in schools. The national anthem, flags flying in school, picture of the monarch on the wall, the curriculum talking about the British Empire, talking about European empires, talking about how the British were the first people in the world to say we're going to end slavery, and then almost bankrupted ourselves doing it, and hundreds of sailors died doing it. No one ever talks about that.
No.
We also have to then talk about why we had a slave trade. That's because black people were selling black people into slavery. White people never caught any black people and sold them into slavery. It was black kings and tribal leaders who did the slaving, and were doing it before we ever turned up in Africa. And it was white Englishmen who stopped it all. So all these things need to be taught about. We need to be taught about communism and socialism, about how it doesn't work, and how many people Mao killed and Stalin killed and Nazi Germany, who were socialists, how many people they killed. And that's what...
We did used to talk about that when I was at school.
Yeah, some of it will still be covered.
Yeah.
But it depends how it's taught. So I'm sure communism isn't taught as if it's evil. Well, it is evil. And we've got the bodies to count for it.
Yeah.
It's
far more bodies under communism than anything else.
Yeah, it's never worked anywhere. So that's what we need to teach people. So the curriculum, absolutely, because that's how we get the next generation of patriots. Is we need to do it in schools, and it is propaganda.
Although there is an argument now, isn't there, that this next generation, they call them Zoomers, are far more radical and less left-wing than the current generation going. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening or how that's happening.
Well, that's because young people rebel from what they perceive as the authority figures at the time. We live in a socialist, left-wing leaning country.
Yeah.
Of course, people coming through now are seeing that and going, I don't know what it is, but I'm against it because I'm 14.
Yeah.
So
that's great news.
The natural swings always happen.
That's great news.
And socialism will also die in this country after 2 years of Labour. Because lots of people in this country have never lived with a socialist government.
Yes, they've kind of seen it in the distance and think, oh,
utopia,
fantastic.
Utopia. They're going to spend money, they're going to kill the rich, and that all sounds fun. Let's get a couple of years of a Labour government and let's see if you're a socialist then.
Which is why I think reform has a very good chance of coming on the long-term vision of
the next
reform,
election.
The next election. I think there is a possibility. School, again, education reform. Ban transgender ideology from schools.
They should ban lots of things in school. They should ban all politics. They should ban teaching communism. They should ban the LGB. They should ban Black Lives Matter. They should ban the eco nutcases. They should ban it all.
Yeah, they should ban. They should ban transgender ideology. In my view, critical race theory should be banned, which is now all over the place.
Yeah.
This toxic net zero climate change indoctrination needs to end as well.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they're pouring on our kids now.
Yeah.
That just needs to stop. Just teach them maths, English, and history. And science. 20% tax relief on independent education.
Yes, but not for the reason some people think. So
what that means is if you pay 10 grand a year for your child's private education, you'll get 20% back. That's what he's saying. It's like a pension. You know your pension now, if you pay 8 quid in, you get 10 quid actually put into your pension. What he's saying is there's tax relief. So if you put on your tax return, you pay...
Read it again.
20% tax relief on independent education. So if I pay £10,000 for my kid's private education...
You claim 2 back.
When I put my tax return, I'll get 2 grand back.
Right, I misread that. I thought that was because Labour.
But you thought it was a VAT thing,
Labour are going to bring VAT
in,
20% for private schools. So I thought that was about to say we're not doing that. Now,
this is going the other way.
The other way. I don't agree with putting that on private schools, and I'm going to talk about private healthcare as well. For the simple reason, if you pay for private healthcare or private schooling, you're not using the general pot. You've now made it easier for other people to get into
Correct.
school.
You're reducing the stress on the...
So you're paying twice for the service, but then why would the Labour government then want to tax you for doing us a favour by not using the general pot?
Yeah.
So I'm against that. That I'd have to have a look into and give that a lot more thought if it's a tax relief.
I mean, I think the argument they're using there is what you just put forward. If you put your kid into private education, you're removing stress from the state.
Yeah, you are.
And you're giving more opportunity for children who can't afford to get better education in their schools. So there is an argument for it.
Yeah, there is.
But you're right, there's not an argument for sticking VAT on private education.
Only if you're envious.
Yes.
And that's why. And the people like Starmer and all those people who hate private schools or went to private schools, even people like Diane Abbott, she sent her son to a fee-paying school.
Oh yeah, I know.
All these socialists are hypocrites.
Yes, they are.
They are. Jeremy Corbyn sent his two sons to grammar school. He's a grammar school graduate as well. All these people get the benefits out of it, but don't want the benefits of your children to have.
Yes, correct. We've enjoyed it.
We'd rather you all be poor together. Because that socialism will all be poor together.
And it's like, it is like, isn't it? It's like the Just Stop Oil people. These knackered old desiccated men and women who've spent their life enjoying the benefits of oil. But they don't want this generation to have it, do they? They just, that's what's really, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. And finally, scrap interest on student loans, which I quite like. So I don't think students should have to take loans. When I went to university, for various reasons I didn't get a grant, but everybody else tended to get free education.
My initial gut reaction to this one is no. Student loans are not loans. Student loans are, you're going to pay slightly more tax throughout your life until you've paid it off. They're not loans. They don't affect your credit
scoring. Actually, it
scoring.
disappears when you're 50.
Do they still disappear at 50?
They get written. Well, most of them get written off when you're 50. They don't do that anymore.
I think that changed.
Oh, right, okay.
I think that changed. 85% of student loans are paid off in full. 15% of student loans are paid off in full. Only 15%.
So I had quite a few friends who, when their kids were going to university, they said, "Oh yeah, we're borrowing 45 grand and give it because we don't want it to be burdened with a student loan." And I said, It's not a loan.
So they've been worded incorrectly.
And then, in fact, some people I know actually changed their minds and actually told the kids to take loans as a result.
Exactly.
Because it's not a loan. It's a financial vehicle that's very beneficial for the user of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't concentrate on that. I would concentrating on improving the universities. We're sending far too many children to university who are getting Mickey Mouse degrees from crap universities, getting 50, 60, 70 grand's worth of so-called debt. And they're going to have to pay an extra 13% in tax for the rest of their life as they're working a crap job stacking shelves. We sold them a lie. We sold them a dream that will never come true.
And they paid for it.
And they've paid for it. And they never get the benefit out of it. And most of them are still idiots after left university because they get a poor education while they're there as well. So I wouldn't concentrate on reducing the interest rate because that means nothing. Because we pay all the bills anyway. I would start looking at how do we halve the universities in this country, half the courses in this country. And government can do that. So governments need to say to universities, right, we've looked at your courses, these 15 courses, the government will not fund a student grant to attend those courses because you've got lesbian dance theory, you've got, pop music degree, you've got these things which are meaningless, and we will not give children the money to do those. If they want to pay for it themselves and get a proper loan, or mum and daddy do it, fill your boots. I don't stop people doing the courses they want to do, but I don't want to pay for them. I want to pay for courses that the government will get a benefit from. And let's look at some of those courses. Let's look at STEM or physics or nuclear, whatever. Some of those courses, the government should be saying, it's £9 grand a year, but we need them. We're going to pay half your courses. If you finish 3 years and you pass a degree, we're going to pay off automatically half your debt because we need people doing that. We need to incentivise people to get the degrees we need if we're paying them to do it, and that improves the country. But just knocking off interest off that, again, he's going for the student vote there. That's what he's going for.
He's been quite clever. I don't agree with you about the lesbian dance theory because that's my degree. That's the degree.
Well, you've done quite well in life, so I'd like to apologise about that. Cause he's done all right.
I find it comes in very useful on a day-to-day basis. I'll go on to the NHS, but let me do transport first because I think this will chime with you. Scrap HS2.
Yeah.
Ban ULEZ and low traffic neighbourhoods.
Absolutely.
And scrap most 20 mile an hour zones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are really, really, I mean, that really, chimes really well with me. HS2, I think, is the biggest waste of money ever going for absolutely little or no benefit to most of the people who use the trains, I think.
HS2 is the wrong project for today. HS2 should have been built in the 90s. There was a call for it in the 90s. We're not the same. This is how long it takes us to build projects in this country. By the time we've got it now, it's not wanted, it's not needed, it's a waste of money.
But it was never needed. These high-speed trains, and I've travelled on most of them around the world, they're built for big countries where there's big distances to travel. We're not a big country.
No, we're not.
It takes 3 hours to drive to London from Manchester.
Yeah, 2 hours by train.
2 hours by train. Yeah. 2 hours by train. Knocking 10 minutes off that makes no difference. If it was 10 times the distance, let's get a high-speed train between London. But it's just such a short distance. There's no benefit. You understand the rationale in France. You understand the rationale in Germany. These are massive countries. You understand the rationale in Japan, which is a very, very long island. But it's not needed.
I think it's the wrong project for the wrong decade.
Yeah.
There may have been an argument for it in the 90s.
Yeah.
But 30 years later, when we can't even get people to go into the office anymore.
Yes.
Well, why do we need extra transport to not leave the house?
Ban ULEZ, I know that's a favourite of yours because of you're particularly against
clean air zone, or anything that attacks the motorist, anything that makes me pay to drive on the roads I've already paid for once.
Yeah.
Doesn't chime well with me.
And the reason I like that one particularly is all three of them is getting rid of stuff. Yeah. Getting rid of behaviours that they're constantly imposing on us, like the ULEZ, the low traffic, 20 miles. He's just saying we're going to get rid of it. And that's what we need, less state intervention, not more.
There's no evidence anywhere in this country that reducing drivers to 20 miles an hour reduces accidents.
I can believe that.
There's no evidence for it at all.
Yeah, but they're still doing it.
They're still doing it.
NHS, frontline staff, I'm not sure I agree with this. Frontline staff to pay zero basic tax for 3 years. So that means if you're a not particularly good nurse, you're not going to pay tax for 3 years. Yeah. I don't agree with that.
Also increases the pull factor from around the world.
True.
So I'm not too, again, and I don't want to pull people out of tax because for me that's how they buy into the country. You pay tax. I want to reduce the amount of tax to pay. But again, there's a political policy.
Yeah.
He's accused of attacking the NHS. He wants to change the NHS, which does need changing.
Yes.
That's his way of saying, but you won't be paying tax for 3 years.
What he is putting in here is similar to the private schools, 20% tax relief on private health insurance.
Yeah.
Again, the same logic.
Yeah.
You're relieving the burden on the NHS by going private. I'm going to encourage that. So he's encouraging people to step away from the NHS and take on private health.
Yeah. Another thing with the nurses not paying tax for 3 years, 5 years, whatever you said. What happens after
3
that?
3 years. Yeah.
So suddenly you learn to live on 28 grand a year.
Yeah.
And then after 3 years, you've got 28 grand a year minus 20%.
Yeah, I know.
That won't go down.
That nurse will go into work that day and punch a granny, won't they?
Yeah. And I'm skinned. I've just had a pay cut now. How can you give all these nurses a pay cut after so many years? Some of these things
won't work.
It won't work because they're electioneering on some of these, one of these points.
This one I really agree with. I know it's something you like to talk about every week. Vaccine harms public inquiry.
We do need that. Absolutely. With anything, because this is how we got to the state with the postmasters and the contaminated blood. When we make a mistake in this country, if the state makes a mistake, we need to investigate it immediately, truthful, and then tell people where we went wrong so the state can learn from it. At the moment, all the state learns is we need to bury this for as many decades as we can. That's not the lesson we need to get out of these things. We need to open up and we need to tell them where we made the mistakes. If it's criminal, if it's incompetence, we need to hold people accountable. Sometimes there'll be no one to hold accountable. It was purely a mistake. We didn't know what AIDS was. That's why we contaminated people with AIDS. But once we knew what AIDS was, it never should have happened again.
Yes.
But you can forgive them at the beginning. But once they knew what AIDS was, they hid everything, and people still were getting contaminated with blood because no one wanted to admit what they'd done before. That's criminal.
Yes, yeah. But I think you said this before, the inquiry tends to happen when that generation has died and retired and had their money or whatever. So.
Yeah. Because then that instills on the new civil servants now that if you've looked after us, that means the civil servants will come after you, will look after you, because we're all protecting our backs in this chain.
Defence. Increased spending to 3%. I don't know what it is at the moment. Increased spending to 3% of GDP within 6 years.
So to be a member of NATO, you have to spend 2%. I think we're spending slightly more than that. Is it 2.3% or something at the moment we are? But they want to raise it to 3%. We do need to raise it to 3% because our armed forces are in a mess. We've got a war with China coming. We'll have a war with China in our lifetime. Russia's not a threat. Russia can't even beat Ukraine. Russia's dangerous.
But Romania can. 3-0. Anyway,
right, can they? I've not watched the football.
You missed a good match there. Anyway,
I can't watch the football. I can't watch England anymore now, not since taking the knee. So I've not watched any football.
Actually, I don't know if are they taking the knee in the
Some people online say don't do it anymore, Nick. But do you know what? I still can't watch it.
No, they still do it in the UK, but I don't. Now you mention it, I don't think they've been taking it in the Euros, because otherwise I probably would have noticed. Yeah. So that's great news.
I still can't watch them.
Yeah.
They've lost a fan with me. So
I will be taking some Man United next season. Don't
right,
I?
good. So I can be.
Yeah.
War with China's coming.
Yeah.
We need to increase our defence spending because that's how we avoid wars. We avoid wars by having our enemies go, they're too strong to mess with. If we're weak, which we are now, look at the state of our arms, 75,000 personnel in the armed forces, 75,000. That fills Old Trafford. That's it. That's all we've got.
Yeah.
Aircraft carriers, I'm not sure what's going on with them, but the planes anymore now, nothing works. And then the woke virus has infected our armed forces. We've got soldiers in drag, we've got soldiers wearing makeup, we've got far too many women in there.
Yeah.
The amount of leg injuries in our armed forces, women are overrepresented in leg injuries and stuff like that.
Why?
Because they're weaker.
Oh, I see.
So that's why we call them the weaker sex, because
they're not doing something specifically to
no, they just can't handle it, so they hurt themselves more. All these things we need to look at. We need a fighting force because a war's coming, potentially a third world war.
So what he's also saying is recruit 30,000 to join the army full time.
Yes.
Another 30,000. Because apparently we're recruiting, territorial army types.
Yeah.
Which are like these part-timers. Yeah. So he's saying rather than doing that, let's spend the money and get 30,000.
We're also recruiting people from around the world.
Yeah.
And with the offer of you do so many years in the British Army or whatever, and then you and your family can live here forever.
No, really, are we?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So we did it. We've been using a good example is the Gurkhas. So the Gurkhas...
I like the Gurkhas, though.
The Gurkhas are mercenaries,
yeah.
So that's great. And we used them because we paid them less, because they lived in Nepal, standard of living's less, and we had a great relationship with them. Now, if you're a Gurkha and you work for the British Army, you now get exactly the same pay as a British soldier, same pension as a British soldier, and you're entitled to get your family to move here.
Really?
There's no benefits now of having the Gurkhas.
No.
So we need to stop doing that from around the world. And if we want to recruit 30,000 people into our armed forces, we need to make it a job they want to do. There's no pride now. There's no pride being a British soldier.
No.
You're next to someone who's trans or gay or is from Nigeria, or your commander's a woman, and it's like, What am I doing here? Because we want macho soldiers, because to win a battle, to win a war, you need fighters. You don't need people going, oh, I've just broke my nail. Oh no, you're not going to win a war like that. So if we're going to recruit more, we need to change the environment in our armed forces.
Yes.
It's all too woke. It's all too pink and fluffy. Russia, China, Iran's watching our armed forces and the American armed forces, and they're going, you've got more technology than us, but when it comes to hand, we're going to spank you all.
I can imagine you in a general's outfit, Nick, as we speak, actually. I can imagine that hat on you. I mean, part of that might be protect the forces from human rights lawyers.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot now where the army, there's a grievance raised by and it's supported by lawyers, and then...
And that's because we've signed up to because of the Court of Human Rights. So we've signed up to that.
Yeah.
So we can't protect our soldiers. We need to pull out of that straight away. And we do need to investigate soldiers where there's been complaints of abuse, because we want a professional force. We don't want,
Otherwise you end up with Abu Ghraib and all that.
Exactly. We don't want any of that.
Yeah.
But that should be internal, under the British government's direction. We don't need foreign lawyers or British lawyers making money out of our armed forces.
The Constitution.
Yep.
Leave the European Convention of Human Rights.
That's what I've been talking about.
You have? So you're happy with that one? Leave the World Health Organization. See, again, I like all this because it's kind of get rid of legislation, move legislation, move our need to have to conform to external countries.
Parliament should be sovereign.
Yeah.
Because we send people to Parliament. If we don't like them, we send them out. Nothing we can do about the WHO.
Correct.
And European Court of Human Rights. But yet they're dictating to our country. I don't like any of that.
Scrap the Equalities Act.
Yeah.
Scrap the TV licence and reform the BBC.
Yes, what we need to do with the BBC is we say to them, you cannot increase the TV licence for the next 6 years, and at the end of 6 years, there'll be no more TV licence. You have 6 years to change the model, do whatever you want, because in 6 years' time, there will be no TV licence. And in those 6 years, the TV licence will not go up. And we've given them time then to do what they need to do.
Can we not give them just 3 years?
I'm happy to debate how many years they need and stuff like that.
When you're the Prime Minister, I'll come back and lobby and ask you to reduce to 3 days. 3 years, sorry. Yeah. Make St George's Day a public holiday.
Absolutely. It should be a national holiday where we celebrate everything, what's great about England. Because England's the greatest country in the world. We think Britain's the greatest country in the world. It's not Great Britain, it's England. When we talk about
I noticed one of the comments on you got a lot of views on the Tommy Robinson thing.
Yeah, about 3,500 views on that. Yeah,
and I think you were talking about the Scottish. I can't remember what you were saying about the Scottish. That they shouldn't be there or something like that. And that a Scottish viewer wrote in and said, "There's another one on because there's another one happening, isn't there? On the
end of July.
End of July." He said, "Is it? Am I allowed to come down from Scotland, Nick?" I don't know if you saw.
I didn't see that one. I've had quite a few people comment on that, and my answer is, first of all, as a Scot, you've got your own country. It's called Scotland.
Yeah.
I've got a country here called England. England's my country. I'm trying to save England. Once I've saved England, I might then try to save the UK and Great Britain.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to save England.
Yeah.
It's okay to be Scottish. It's okay to love Scotland. It's okay to wear your kilt. We can't do anything in England anymore.
No, we can't.
Because we're racist.
Yeah.
Half of Scotland hate us.
Yeah.
So, but we're not allowed to hate Scots, which I don't hate. I love the Scots. Scots are my cousins. So, again, I'm tired of people from Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland saying to me, "Oh, what about us?" Oh, no, you've got your own countries.
I think there's something. I know you're not watching the football, but you may or may not know that Scotland were beaten 5-0 by Germany.
What?
Or was it 5-1? Sorry, 5-1. No, they got a goal on the opening game of the last Thursday, I think it was Friday. Sorry, Friday. But what was interesting on Twitter and in the things I was getting from various football friends were memes making fun of the loss. Whereas, so I think things have changed because a few years ago you weren't allowed to say anything negative about Scotland, and it was all, when Scotland lost, it was always, oh, they've been courageous, they've done this or whatever, they fought like lions and all that sort. That's all gone for some reason. I don't know why, but I think the English attitude to the Scottish has changed slightly.
Oh, we're becoming more nationalistic, of course we are.
Yeah.
And the Scots started it.
Yeah.
But when Scotland play, unless they're playing England, I want Scotland to win. I'd want Scotland to beat Germany. Yeah, of course, because
I've got to be careful what I say here.
Because they're my cousins. Welsh are my cousins, and Northern Ireland are my cousins. We live, we share these islands. I'm English first, then I'm British.
Yeah.
So I want Britain to do well. I want Scotland to do well. Unless they're playing England, of course.
I don't think that's a general sentiment that's shared by a lot of young English men now.
It used to be,
yes,
20, 30
I think
years
it did.
ago.
I don't think...
But Scottish independence and the anti-English rhetoric we constantly get from across the border, by only a percentage of the population.
I think because of the anti-English rhetoric there's been for a long time now, I think a lot of young English men, football supporters... will not support Scotland in the Euros. I would also say that the Scottish have been saying that for years. They wouldn't support England, whatever happened. Yeah. But I think there's been a shift now, and this thing about the English, the Scottish are courageous and all that. They fought and well, support them. I think that's disappeared a bit.
Yeah. And the Scots have brought that upon themselves.
Yeah.
Certain percent, not all Scots. Many Scots love England and want us to be a united country, which that's the page I'm on. But there's many Scots who hate the English, who blame the English.
I think you're the only Englishman left who still supports Scotland.
Because I'm a wonderful person.
Because you care about people, don't you? You care. Brexit. I don't know how you voted on Brexit, by the way. I voted... Leave.
I've been Leave all my life. I can remember when I realised I wanted to leave. And it was when the 4 SAS soldiers killed those IRA terrorists on Gibraltar who were about to blow up a car.
Yeah.
I was mid-teens, and the European court and Europe were saying that the British Army were terrorists and we would prosecute them. And that's when I went, I want to leave this organisation. I'm not having... So I was mid-teens. So I've been a Brexiteer since mid-teens.
Well,
40 years.
I voted Brexit. When was it now, Brexit?
8 years ago.
I voted Brexit 8 years ago. I was the only person in my family to vote Brexit, I believe, although technically they didn't have to tell me their votes. And I would say I was the only one amongst my peers to vote Brexit. Now, looking back on it, I'm so glad I did. And I'm so glad I made that decision. And I'm so glad it happened. And it's been abused in terms of the way it's been implemented. We can see that. But...
It's not been implemented.
It's not been implemented.
I'm glad we've left, but it's not been implemented.
Yeah.
But it will be implemented. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll get a government with a backbone, and all these benefits are waiting to be grasped.
Yes.
And somebody will grasp them eventually, but at least we're out.
And I feel I'm quite pleased with myself because I'd have made that vote, because at that time I was still woke. Yeah. It was something... I voted Brexit for business reasons as opposed to... But actually the real reasons are the ones you gave there. Yeah. Being part of an organisation that doesn't care about us, that abuses us, that imposes draconian laws on us, that was a rationale. And I voted Brexit, not for the right reasons, but now I'm so glad I did. Yeah. Anyway, so Brexit, he's proposing, Nigel Farage is proposing, scrap the EU regulations. Yep. Should all go. Yep. Abandon the Windsor framework, which is some sort of half-hearted attempt to re-establish...
That's the agreement we've got with him. I mean, the worst thing we've done, we just talked about Scotland, is what we've done to Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is British soil. They're British citizens. And what we've done to them is said, we don't care about you. We're going to leave you there on your own. You're part British, you're part EU. They're going to mess with you, and we kind of... How we've treated them. We went to war with Argentina for a handful of people in the South Pacific. But yet we've sold down the river people in Northern Ireland. Absolutely disgraceful.
Independence from the EU Horizon programme. I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure what that is. Is that... Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. I'll be guessing. I mean, some projects in Europe we may want to be a part of and say, do you know what? We're developing a new airplane, or we're developing space technology. Do you know what? We might want to be part of that, and we'll pay our share.
But that'll be our choice.
That'll be our choice. So
Yeah.
it's not like I'm anti-EU. I'm not anti-EU. The EU can do what it wants.
Yeah.
And I wish the EU well
Yeah.
because our neighbours are part of it.
We're not anti-Europe, and I'm not anti-Europe.
If Germany and France do well,
Yeah.
well, that helps us because
Yeah.
we've got more markets to sell our stuff into. I want Europe to do well.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be ruled by Europeans. I want
Yeah.
to be ruled by Parliament, by people I've sent there that I can then cancel when I don't like them.
Correct. We want to be in control of
Yes.
our parliament, our lawmakers, basically. Justice, speaking about law, change the definition of a hate crime.
No. Should be no hate crime.
I agree. I think he's got this one wrong. I
Yeah.
would scrap
Yeah.
hate crime, the hate crime legislation. I would scrap
Don't need it.
Yeah.
I've either stabbed you or I've not stabbed you.
Yeah.
The fact you're of Indian origin and I'm calling you names as I'm stabbing you
Yeah.
has nothing to do with it. I'm
Correct.
actually stabbing you.
Yeah. I agree. 10,000 new detention places. I think is that for criminals, I'm guessing. Because I think they're now letting criminals go because there's not enough.
So it should have used
that
the word
prison places?
I don't understand why I didn't use the word prison.
Yeah.
Because even I'm thinking, well, why did he say prisons? Detention centres.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm not sure what he means by
Yeah.
it, but let's say he means prisons. Absolutely. We need to build more prisons.
Yeah.
Last month or 6 weeks ago, the Home Office memoed all judges in the country and told them, try not to send anybody to prison, and gave a list of people not to send, and on there was rapists. Because we've got no places.
Jesus
so for
Christ.
God's sake, don't send rapists to jail if you can help it. We need to build some more prisons. And, I can't remember the figures now, but is it 15, 20, 25% of people in jails in the UK are foreign nationals?
You joking? Are they really?
Foreign nationals.
15 to 20%?
Something like that.
I didn't know that.
We need to deport the lot of them.
It's a good job. You've not written this manifesto. Deport child groomers with dual citizenship. That seems very specific.
That's to do with the Rochdale grooming.
Oh, is that Rochdale?
Because we've got 2 or 3 men there who've done 7 years in jail now. Came out 10 years ago, should have been deported, and are using European Court of Human Rights, paid for by our taxpayers, because they've got, what's it called when the government pay your legal fees?
Yeah, legal aid.
Legal aid.
Yeah.
And they can't be deported, and they were born in Pakistan. And it's like, this is just
That is
mental.
scandalous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anybody in the UK, this is legal, this is law as it stands today. Any foreign national who spends more than 12 months in jail can automatically be assessed for deportation. And we deport hardly anyone.
So those are the main points of the reform. There's a lot more I want to talk about today, but we covered a lot. I think what that was quite interesting and should be quite interesting for our viewers, because in going through that manifesto, we've really covered a lot of your views that you're putting forward, I think. And I don't know if you've written a manifesto I know you've got your 5 key points.
I didn't write a manifesto because there's no way in a million years I'm going to run a government.
No.
So there was no point writing what I'm going to do for the country. So I wrote what I know I can do as an MP to improve lives.
I think that was interesting because we got some insight into your views on quite a broad range of subjects in that manifesto. Yeah. And I think, interestingly, I mean, you've emailed Nigel to talk about reform, but I think, interestingly, a lot of your views echo his views and his manifesto, which is interesting. And to me, when I read that the first time, it just seemed like common sense. That, but I think what is startling on that is that manifesto is completely different to all the manifestos of Labour, Conservatives, and the Liberal Democrats. I can't even know what they're called.
Somebody read out a bit of the Tory manifesto on GB News, and I'm paraphrasing now, but it was somewhat along these lines.
I heard this.
The UK, we're a fantastic multicultural, diverse nation.
Yeah, where there's no hate and all.
And it's like, who's wrote this? And it's like, Tory man. It's like, the Tories still haven't got it.
Yeah, and I think that's when you read the other. This is why I'm hoping people will just vote reform, even if it doesn't guarantee a seat for them.
Yeah.
Just vote reform, and say, this is what we're looking for in our country. Because it's a common sense way to approach running your country, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looking after your citizens, relying on the people, not spending money on rubbish, just looking after the people. A favourite phrase of mine, my dad used to use it a lot, one of the few phrases that made sense: charity begins at home. Yeah. And that's a manifesto, in my view, that cares about England, about Britain.
Because that's what they're employed to do. That's why we elect politicians, elect government. We don't elect a British government to help people in Kashmir.
Yes.
We elect people to Parliament to help people in Oldham, in Macclesfield, in Trafford.
Yeah.
That's their job.
Yeah. And for me, what I still don't understand is why most of the general public don't understand that when they see the rubbish that we're being exposed to. That's the bit I'm still
It's because they've still got it too good.
Right.
They've still got it too good. So
you almost think we need that brutality for a couple of years of Labour?
I think we need Labour for a couple of years to help us hit rock bottom, to dispel the myth that socialism is going to change everything. Immigration will get... This election now is not about immigration. The next election will be about immigration. And we've just not hit rock bottom yet for the vast majority of people to want.
But I think a lot of countries in Europe have hit rock bottom.
Yes.
And if you look at countries like Sweden, Holland, Germany now, don't forget, Germany is where Angela Merkel said, anybody who wants to come here can come here. Yeah. And now it's just, it's a horrific place to be, apparently.
Yeah. France, it looks like Le Pen's going to win.
Yeah.
She won the European election for France. I mean, all change is coming. They're rejecting immigration. They're rejecting the net zero because it's killing their farmers.
Yeah.
And they're rejecting the net lunacy, the woke lunacy.
Yeah. So maybe you're right. Maybe the problem is we have still got it too good here, and not everybody's being touched by this yet. But maybe in a couple of years everybody will be touched.
I think they will.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could, 4th of July, please vote for Nick Buckley, MBE, in Oldham East and Saddleworth elections to be your parliamentary candidate. Thank you very much, Nick.
Cheers.
Did you like that video? I think you did. Hit the bell, give it a big thumbs up, comment, and don't forget I'm standing for election in Oldham East and Saddleworth. So please share this video, speak to your family and friends if you live in Greater Manchester, and if you live in Oldham East and Saddleworth, make sure you vote for me. Catch you soon.